Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mr. A, with my partner.
Sally Sasson in the building, Corona free.
And this is the set 6145. Hope everybody's feeling well. Tonight, as always, we have a very, very special guest, Mr. Adrian Viajero Roman.
Román.
Romantico. He is an artist above all things. And tonight we're going to talk about his art and his children's book, his travels, and everything that he's done once he's discovered his passion in his life. So we hope to have a very interesting conversation with the Viajero. I like that name. I read it. I was like, yo,
you got to tell them, explain it to those that don't know what it means.
Yeah, I really think that's dope. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when I was reading his website, I kept going back to the word, and I'm like, what's going on with this? And then I said, wait a minute, viajero. Oh, the traveler. Oh, this is dope. I like this. So, original. Mm-hmm. Mr. Johnny Chavez.
Original Don Dada.
For real. So before, let's get into our usual semantics, if you would.
Yes, sir.
And I'm on 2 hours, so did anybody die?
I don't think so. Tiger Woods had a bad accident yesterday, but that was about it. I think he's out of surgery and he's good.
He mangled his legs or something?
Yeah, mangled his legs. They cops definitely he probably was twizzy and they hit it because Tiger gonna take care of them later on. Yeah, I got you with some clubs and some autographs, boys.
The tag you were watching.
It was a single car accident. So I mean, who knows? Whatever. I hope
Did he hit anybody, or he just off the road on his own?
Yeah, off the road type stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think he hit anyone. Yeah, but
wow, that's crazy. But I saw the car, and I was like, oh,
they had a life.
Mm-hmm. I was like,
whew, yeah, they I don't even think they waited for Joseph. I think people just started using some tools to get him out. They shattered his ankle, and I think he had like some bone protruded through his leg, and yeah, man. But he had the surgeries and supposedly he's good. I guess he got to start the rehab. But, you know how those things go too. You get an infection or some shit later on, like Alex Smith. So who knows? But hopefully, prayers to him. Hopefully he's good.
That's crazy. Yeah, it just when I saw the picture, mm-hmm. I was like, wow, this guy should be dead.
Yeah.
Running around, when a car flips over like that, and it looks like it did it a couple of times. We watch movies and we're like, oh yeah, the hero comes out of the car without a scratch. Man,
yeah, no, that's not happening.
It's not like that. Like, you niggas get shot in movies and they're like, I'm gonna kill you. Nah.
Yeah.
People get shot in movies is way different than in life. So great, man. Hope he makes it back. I want to give a special shout out to a gentleman that I met through a mutual association. Ms. Danette Chavis was on the premiere show of the set, and she introduced me to this gentleman, and he's crazy talented. He has a long history of making music and all sorts of things in media, and I think he's about to release the film, but whatever the case, Mr. Tylon Washington is releasing a movie called Disappearing Freedom, The Decline of Justice. And this movie is about, wrongfully convicted people that are behind bars. I'm sure we've seen many iterations of this sort of theme, but this one is super interesting. So if you can, please look up Disappearing Freedom, The Decline of Justice by Mr. Tylon Washington. And of course, the people who are backing him and whatnot. But it looks really, really good. So if you get a chance, look him up. I'm going to post that to the page. It's a great documentary. He just had a guest on his show called GoPro Radio. And yeah, man, it's the work is really, really, really solid. So you want to give that a look up. Also,
like a lot of people making movies, a lot of entrepreneurs, trying to do their thing, man, which is good, man. It's like people seem like they ran out of ideas in Hollywood. Like, really?
Yeah, they're recycling everything.
Yeah.
Which is annoying to me because it's like, wait, that was great the way it was. Why are you know what I mean? Ms. Reyes, good evening. We see you. Also, as you know, this coming Sunday, we are going to have, I'm just going to call him artist. I'm not going to say he's this or that because I think I'm getting it mixed up. I think the gentleman makes handmade action figures, but he may call them something else.
Right.
Mr. Corey Hanzo from Philadelphia. His work is amazing. You can look him up on IG, Corey Hanzo, ACORI, and then Hanzo, HONZO. Amazing artist doing amazing work. He was just featured on Fox 5 out there in Philadelphia. He's going to be with us Sunday. So make sure you tune in. And then the 7th, comedian actor, Mr. Corey Fernandez is going to be on here. So no, this is not the 7th, it's the 14th. I'm sorry. The 14th of March, Mr. Corey Hanzo is going to be with us.
February's over. February's over. Get it out of here.
Funny guy. You want to make sure to tune in for that. You gotta excuse me.
Yeah, he was in Cop Out. He did a couple of movies.
He was in BET. Yeah, One Mic Stand.
Yeah, for sure.
He is a funny guy. So if you can, look him up. And then March 7th, we're gonna have Brooklyn's own East New York stand up, AG the Coroner. And you don't want to miss that one. AG is a talented rap. I hate using talented. He's dope. I'll use the word from when we grew up. He's dope. He really puts it down. He's in the pocket of the boom bap era, and he's lyrical, which again, I appreciate that. But if you can look up his music, AG the Coroner, his last album was called Crushed Grapes, and then his new release is called The Revenant. Isn't that movie with what's this guy's name?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I never saw it, but I heard of it.
Yeah, it was a terrible movie. A pioneer frontier dude, getting beat up by bears and whatnot. But yeah. But what's this cat's name?
Oh man, he was in Departed. Was DiCaprio? Yeah, there you go. Stevie got it.
Oh, okay.
Leonardo DiCaprio. What's up, Stevie?
Stevie, salute. Hey, what's up, baby? All the way from out west. So yeah, AG the Coroner will be with us on the 7th. So make sure you tune in, man. He's again dope artist, super lyrical. He has this joint called Rock Lundgren. So Rocky and Dolph Lundgren. So it's him. The hell's this? Yo, I'm so faded right now.
Wake up.
I'm having
get some Red Bull or something.
For real. Excuse me. It's AG the Coroner, Mayhem Loren, and Action Bronson, and it's called Rock Lundgren. Check it out. Look up his music, man. It's dope. It'll make you feel like in your teen years during the Wu-Tang era. So he's gonna be with us on the 7th. Make sure you check that out. But tonight,
did you see the Math Hoffa Method Man? They did like a little one-on-one freestyle. It was dope. I'm gonna send it to you. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, I was looking at Math Hoffa and Method Man. Real nice on YouTube.
It's funny because when I got into battle rap, when it started to take a little turn to growing, Math was one of the first ones that I was like, I don't know, there's something about Brooklyn.
Yeah,
he's a Brooklyn cat. And he was like one of my favorites in the beginning. So Math is, he's changing clothes right now, doing podcasts, salute to Math. Oh, man. Who's in the room? Mr. Cologne, Mr. Lopez, good evening. We see you. Our boy from out west. I can't even say Little Ray. He's a fucking grown-ass man.
Oh, man, now. Ray.
Salute to you, brother. We see you. And Mr. Freddie Roman, good evening. So what's up? We're going to start this track.
Let's do it.
Let's get it started.
Let's get it rocking.
All right, people, let's go. Let's start the show. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mr. A. with my partner.
Sally Sasson in the building.
And this is the set 6145. Tonight, we have Mr. Adrian Viajero Roman. I was told that I have to add the accent at the to make it sound, correct. So we're gonna bring Mr. Viajero in the room. We're gonna talk about his upbringing, his art, and everything. All the little details. So I hope everybody's ready for tonight. Mr. Cortez, we see you. Yeah, our brother Ox put this together for us. Said he's gonna be getting his when he comes out of the woods.
I didn't make the team yet.
So yeah, man, he put it together. If everybody's watching, everybody who's watching, you can see this is the camel hat I just posted. So if you want your hats, hit the Cash App. If you don't have that, you can reach out with the Zelle, whatever, we'll make it happen for you. And they're going fast. I already got like 5 more DMs as I got up today. Miss Millie Mill, we see you. Miss Quiles, Miss Quiles, good evening. So
Quilles.
Yeah, that's the Blanqui way to say it, right? Quiles. It's Quiles, no? Quiles. So again, tonight, Mr. Adrian Viajero Roman is going to be joining us. So let's set it up. Let's get this brother in the room and let's start this conversation, man. Really good dude. And to connect through our boy, Mr. Stivey. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the set, Mr. Adrian Viajero Roman. Yo. What's going on, brother?
Fellas? How's it going?
On, Adrian?
Wait a minute. So evidently, Freddie Roman is your dad.
Yeah, hopefully that's my dad and it's not somebody else. But
that was real Puerto Rican of you to say.
Hopefully it's my dad. But yes.
How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to talk to my Sunset brothers here, and
for sure.
And I'm proud, proud Puerto Rican, proud of the hood. So thank you for doing this.
Understand something. This show has been in the making for about a month and a half to 2. Mr. Roman, you hear me, Blanqui, Mr. Roman, Mr. Roman and myself.
Romance in the Stone.
We had a conversation. I want to say it was December. No, I believe it was December. And I was at the barbershop and we had a conversation and we could have stayed on the phone for hours. The conversation just started taking all sorts of different left and right turns. We had January all locked up. Things were happening. But then, evidently there was some other things that went on too. But, now I'm glad to say that, we made it happen. And Mr. Roman is on the show. And I'm just excited to have this conversation. So let's start at the beginning, as we always do. So at what point, Adrian, do you, or as far as you can remember, at what point do you start to discover your love and passion for art? Was it in your very early years or as a teen, or when does it happen for you?
Oh man, it's one of those things where I can't give like a clear definitive of like when I really enjoyed doing art. I feel like I've done it literally all my life from childhood. I'd say 6, 5 years old, like the feeling of wanting to do it and that satisfaction of paint by numbers, like any of those kind of creative things always kind of drew me in. But I think junior high school, I went to Shallow Junior High School in Brooklyn, and I won. Yes, Shallow. I won an art contest to take Saturday morning art classes at Pratt Institute. The kind of famous Pratt art school in Brooklyn. So I think being that young, and you're surrounded by all your peers and your family and everybody who always gives you like that encouragement and always kind of gives you pats on the back, and it's like, oh, you draw so good, and you're such a dope artist, and can you do this for me? The girls asking to draw this thing for them, but I never felt that that acknowledgement from anyone outside of my own circle.
Okay.
And I think that was the moment, I think, in junior high school where like the school acknowledged me for being really good, and then kind of gave me that award to take this, like, I'm in college. Like, it was a Saturday, but I'm in Pratt Art School taking drawing classes. So I think from that point, I started to kind of seek that acknowledgement from people outside of my own circle, from outside of my neighborhood, my family. So
it's crazy because he says shallow. And the only reason I'm going to say this next thing is because you said shallow. Do you remember the art teacher? Tall? I can. I don't remember her name. I just remember what she looked like. She was a real tall lady with long black hair, and her art.
Trying to sleep with the art teacher.
Hell no. She like the Wicked Witch of the East, but she was a really nice lady. She was like really smart, and she was the only room in the whole building that had a computer.
Let's talk about Mrs. White, Stevie. Where's Stevie at?
No, he's there somewhere.
I know. I see him.
He's in the room. Yeah. So you get this award, and you're going to Pratt. I mean, what was it, 7th or 8th grade?
I think that was 8th grade. Yeah, it was right before I graduated, and then it kind of took me into that. Well, go ahead. It was 8th grade.
No, I'm just saying, I'm trying to think because, we grew up in a different era. So at 8th grade, you're kind of like already traveling on, well, not even, you're a lot more aware of the world around you. So going to Pratt, it must have been like a real mind-blowing sort of experience to be in that world. Right?
How are you getting there?
Yeah.
Are you traveling on the train by yourself? Are you getting dropped off?
Can I, my dad is on here, so I'm going to confess it was their responsibility, the parents, to figure out how I was going to get there. So I only actually got to go to 2 classes because we didn't live close to Pratt, obviously. So it would have been the train, or would have been my mom or my dad dropping me off. But, life kind of takes its course, certain other things life gets in the way, and
of course
we couldn't make it. And, but the 2 classes that I did attend were super impactful enough. It was impactful because I felt uncomfortable, right? There was a sense of discomfort of being the youngest in the room. Sort of that feeling of having an expectation that I should be as good as these adults in the room that are drawing, right? I was the only kid in the room. There was adults having the same class. So I think that uncomfortable feeling of like, everything came so naturally to me, drawing, and just because I just did it, that I kind of felt like I got put on the spot of like, you're good enough to be here. Show us what you can do.
Right.
And I was like, but it just comes to me. So like, what are they looking for? Am I doing this right? So I think that discomfort made me really internalize and think about what I was doing, and think about how important art was to me. It made me draw more. It made me be more interested in it because I didn't feel like I had all of the answers yet. So
it's funny that you put it in that context, because when I'm listening to you, what I hear is that your art comes from a very instinctual or innate place, right? It's something that lives within you. So it's sort of like when we were growing up, I would see Selly play baseball, and he was just good. I never seen him practice. He never used to practice. It was just something that came to him naturally, right? So when you're describing this moment right now, what I hear is this was just something that, who you were. It was a part of you. And it wasn't until you started putting yourself out there that, you started to realize how, this talent that you had was just so natural. And being a kid around adults, that's got to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up, and a lot of my family members are talented. My brother's Freddie is an amazing artist. My dad sketches as well, and my mom doodles on every piece of paper that would be on the kitchen table. Everyone has their thing. Obviously my brother Stevie is an amazing athlete. So even having something that an interest and a feeling of purpose, I was kind of surrounded by that. So,
Wow.
yeah, like being, again, I didn't take it seriously until way down the road, because, again, the acceptance, I think all your friends, all your family, they kind of push you forward. The talent comes quote unquote easy, because you're getting all this like push from everyone. It feels like it's easy, but I was never technically trained for a lot of the things, right? So then when I got to that point, I was already a lot older, where I'm like, holy shit, like I don't know all the shit that I think I know, right? Because there's a kid that was maybe taking those Saturday classes a little bit more seriously and was sharpening that tool more than I was, right? So I started to kind of reflect on, when I finally took it serious, like all of the amazing experiences that I had before that. I would never take away the experiences that I had before that. But I felt like I probably could have tuned myself a little bit better with that, like
we're young.
That's like an
Yeah.
athlete, like myself, like Mr. A said, I definitely know why I didn't make it, because I didn't work as hard as the next man. When I took it for granted as my talent, and I just went, so I understand where you're coming from. There's a saying like, be comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably what you went through. So you're a visual artist, right? Basically, you're like visual artist. So were you always a visual artist, or was it different? And can you explain visual artists to the to the room?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've always been. I can reflect now and just say I kind of call myself like a multidisciplinary visual artist, because I don't just draw, or I'm not just a painter. Like I try to tap into all these different ways to express my work visually. So whether it's an installation, I love to build experiences to make you kind of take away from whatever you're looking at. Like I love that feeling of having an experience with the work. Yeah, so a visual artist is someone who's creating something visually for you to experience visually. So painters, sculptors, any art that that's kind of tangible, right? Like doesn't necessarily have to be at that high level of like fine art of being a painter or something. Even craftsmen, people that build furniture, right? These are visual artists. People who crochet dolls, that we look at these things as artisans because it's like a craft, but these are artists. These are people who are skilled, who are creating something beautiful, visual, and has a representation for something. It symbolizes something. So
Adrian, I'm sorry to jump in.
No, please go ahead.
So in 8th grade, you go to Pratt. You take this class. You get 2 classes. Mommy and Poppy were a little too busy. We've all experienced those things growing up. So you get into high school. Do you start getting deeper? Because you said it wasn't until later on. So I'm assuming that it wasn't until after high school that you really started getting into, developing your work and honing your skill.
Yeah. So I went to Fort Hamilton High School in Brooklyn, and I was kind of trying to develop that indirectly. I was developing a reputation for being the artist, and it was only around the people that I was around. So my friends from the block, my friends from the neighborhood, who kind of, you get peer pressure, you get influence, you want to hang out with the crew. I became that artist of these circles of people. But within classes, I became the artist in different circles. So I was that person who, I didn't have to join a gang because I knew all the gang members. I didn't have to, do certain things and hang out with certain people. Even the good kids in the school, I knew them and I hung out with them in the cafeteria and stuff, because I was the artist. But there were other kids that were artists as well. And like Sally said, you kind of take certain things for granted, your talent, your skills, and your popularity for granted, and you don't leverage that. And by me not doing that, other people crept in, right? They're like, oh, I'm the artist, dude, but there's a kid who loves comic books, and he's copying drawings from comic books daily. And these are beautiful drawings, right? Back then, I think that McFarlane Spider-Man was like the new comic, right? So like heavily graphic, like detail. So if anybody could kind of replicate that style at that time, was like, yo, you're the man.
Yeah.
For me, I'm the dude who, my homies are telling me, yo, I'm going to this party tonight. Roll up my sleeve, draw me a big ass dragon with a Sharpie marker on their arm to pretend they got a tattoo.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm doing people's homework in the cafeteria. So yeah, like through high school, my art teachers though did try to guide me and direct me to hone me back in and say, look, we see you. Mm-hmm. We see what you're doing. We see who you're hanging with. We see all of these things, and like you're extremely talented, and we need you, right? Yeah, man, and I do remember my high school art teacher though, because I think she changed my trajectory. So her name was Miss Coquinez, was my art teacher then, and she reeled me in, but then she also made me a part of a project that will forever be tied to the school, to Fort Hamilton. So their slogan is
that the hanging on my jersey? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. I wasn't part of that one. I heard about that one, but yeah. But there was exactly. There was their slogan or their motto, whatever, I don't know, whichever one is called, respect. So they had this big campaign about respect, because we were talking about it before we went live, was how the school was. It was very segregated in the sense of the different ethnic groups, different gangs, different neighborhoods. Everyone was kind of separated throughout the campus because that high school had a really big campus.
Mm-hmm.
So the school tried to bring unity to all of these different ethnic groups. And the way we designed it, so me and my art teacher, we designed the concept of respect. And I did this drawing of what we looked like back then. So it was like hat backwards, the hoodie, I'm drawing what I see on a daily basis. Right. And then wrote respect in all the different languages that represent the school and the different ethnic groups of the school, in a silhouette of the figures of the high school kids.
Nice.
Wow.
And yeah, man. So projects like that, I think, and again, that's an example of the acknowledgement outside of my circle.
Right.
Right. So like the school, my teacher acknowledged me. The principal, I still have to this day, like the t-shirt they gave me with that logo on it.
Does it
the
fit?
Letter from the principal. Damn, bro.
You said bro.
It fits like up to here.
You put it to your chest?
The
it's
shoulder.
A smarge.
You see?
Smarge.
You see my look.
Uh-huh. So I had to cut the sleeves off and everything. I made it like a basketball shirt.
Man,
yeah,
so being a part of those projects and garnering those accolades, I think we as young, I'll speak for the guys. We as young men sort of need those things early on, to again help us move forward, right? Because some of us are more introverted than others. Other people don't like being in the spotlight, So those moments boost your confidence and make you realize, like, oh, I have something here. I can do something with this. So you're working on this project in high school. Do you go on to college and start getting into art, or do you become like, the working Joe and
El Viajero?
Yeah, El Viajero. Yeah. Is it the Viajero or Exagero? Like, what's the next turn after Fort Hamilton for you?
Yeah, man. It was interesting. I graduated high school a little late, and from there, my parents took me to a couple of colleges. I applied for a couple of different art schools specifically. One of them was in Philadelphia, the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I went out there. We scoped out the school, had my interview. Everything was great. They accepted me, but I didn't take my SAT for high school. So they're like, all right, look, just take your SAT and come back. You already got an acceptance. Like, you just got to take this test, get over, I think it was like 800. Like, it was a low grade apparently. So I was like,
six and you're in.
yeah. So, but I'm again who I'm around and who I'm surrounded with are, now we kind of hear about the issues with that test, right? And now we hear about like the
bias.
how the bias with that test. So, but back then we kind of knew because that test put fear in us, right?
Mhm.
Why did it put fear in us? Because there was a bias. So I was afraid of that test. And
Right.
I was like, nah, like I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna take that test. I don't care. The alternative was they told me if I go to community college or go to another school for 2 years, get an associate's, come back, and you could just come right back in, right? You don't even need your SAT. And to go to a community college or anything like a state college, you don't need your SAT.
Right.
You go right in.
You had to give up 2 years. You have to essentially, what they're telling you is go get an associate's. It was basically 2 years, and then we'll let you walk through the door.
Right.
Same thing with athletics.
Yeah.
Take the
So
test, bro.
I know, I was on that fence of like, do I take the test? Do I not? My mom is crying hysterical in the car, driving there and driving back because she don't want me to move to Philly. Like, it was an emotional experience. Yeah, exactly. It was that like, oh man, so I mean, from there, long story, like, because I jumped around. I went to Kingsborough Community College to do that. I did that 2-year thing.
Okay.
But at the end of the 2 years, like, I'm different. Yeah, I'm already different. I'm like, I'm not thinking about Philly now. Now I'm thinking about what are my other options.
Yeah.
So long story, I ended up going to Miami. I went to art school in Miami, New World School of Art.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So,
terrible decision.
Terrible. Going to Miami. What were you like? 22, 21?
I was 23. I bounced and went. Yeah. By the time I went to Miami, I was 23.
So then,
and then came back to New York. I stayed there for almost 2 years and then moved back. So I did a lot of jumping around for schools, man.
I was waiting for all the terrible stories, like, I went to Miami, got arrested a few times,
Yeah. Nah, we'll save those for the set part 2.
That's another one.
It's a different story. Yeah.
So you make your way out of there. I'm sure that had to have some sort of like effect on you personally. Staying in the neighborhood, maybe the expectations you have for yourself, or even those around you, the expectations they probably had for you, had to affect you as well. But hearing that you went to Miami after and stood out there for a little bit of time, it changes you, right? Those experiences change you when you're a young, up and coming guy. Seeing the world is an important thing, because
absolutely.
Those experiences, they sort of bring a lot to you, and they make you a stronger person. So now,
100%, man. I want to touch on something just like personal with that is, Selly. I mean, Selly and my brother knows, A and stuff for a long time, but where we lived, right? Like we grew up in them early years. We grew up like Bensonhurst area, area where we were clearly different, right? We're the Latinos in the area during a time in the 80s, mid to late 80s, where it's like, the racial clashes with Black and Italians and other Jews and, Puerto Ricans. There was a lot of things happening during that time. So we lived in that. We didn't live, I went to school in Sunset and all these things about Sunset Park, but my early years, my development years were in the neighborhood that we were different, right? We were the Puerto Rican family in this white neighborhood with Jews and Italians. So that kind of had an impact on me, right? Of identity impact of like, who am I, right? Look at my friends of who I'm surrounded by. I had an Ecuadorian or El Salvadorian friend. I had mostly Italian friends, but those younger years, I had people, none of them were Puerto Rican, right? So my brother obviously did, right? Because he played baseball and he knew you and a bunch of other folks because he went and branched out of the neighborhood. But at a younger age, I couldn't do that. But once I started high school, get into those later years, those questions, like it wasn't just about art. It was that art was my identity, but it was also about my cultural identity of who I was and questioning that. And like, navigating cultural identity and navigating my artistic identity, and until eventually, those paths crossed, and like I found it, right? But
Adrian,
but
how did you
a
get
journey.
along? Sorry to cut you. How did you get along with the Italians? And because I know Stivey, he was beloved in the school.
He was an Italian.
So, yeah, he was like Italian. He was Sicilian to us.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I mean, all my friends were mostly Italian. So, but I'm lighter skinned than my brother, right? Mm-hmm. So I passed.
Yeah.
I passed for Italian. I look like what?
You like a cop.
How about now?
Oh, you definitely like a knock.
Oh, damn.
Become the boys.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because you had to realize that at a very young age. Like you said, the difference, right? And realize and understand the people that are around you, even in your age group, and I feel like especially at that time, that was at the forefront. Like they let you know, like, yo, you're not one of us. We friends, but you're not one of us, right?
Exactly. They were my best friends, man.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend at that time was Italian. All my best friends, like, I sounded like I was Italian, right? The way I spoke, and my brother's calling me a narc. It's funny. Yeah. But so it kind of became normal, right? Even my dad. My dad's light skinned like myself, and he's tall. So even when he was around the neighborhood, like everyone embraced him as well. My brother, just like me, like what you said, Mr. A, like they let it be known that you're not one of us, right? We'll accept you, right? We'll play ball with you. You can hang with my kids. You can do this. You can do that. But can we come to dinner in your house? Can we sit at the table with your family? I never did, right? I mean, my brother was probably that good that he probably made his way. It was like, hanging with the mobsters and shit and having dinner with them. But for me, I never did that, right? I was just the friend outside. Like I can play with everybody outside. I can hang out with everybody outside. But I had a best friend in junior high school. I won't say his name, but his mom used to kind of sit and hang out with her friends and say, niggas and spics about, with all her friends, wilding, like talking about us. And I'm just like, and that was a moment for me that I was just like record scratch, like what?
Okay.
Like
I see your true colors.
Yeah, but I was different. Like you said, it was like, but you and your family are different. And I was
the
like
exception,
6th grade or something like that. Yeah, I didn't even know what that exception was, like why that makes me different. I just knew that how my father raised us to be like that word.
Yeah. Those
words were like, nah, like I'm not that, you know what I mean? So when I heard it coming from people that were my homie's family, that was a clear distinction for me that we were different, and that the people around us would treat us that way.
It makes it real. Ladies and gentlemen, just joining the show. I'm your host, Mr. A, with my partner, Mr. Sully
Song in the building. Sorry.
And this is the set 6145. Tonight we're speaking to the artist, Mr. Adrian Viajero Roman. And he's telling us of his time growing up in Bensonhurst and how, learning at a young age that he definitely was different. He wasn't like the rest of his peers. I find it interesting how you referenced how they would say you were different. And if you look throughout entertainment and just articles and anything you could look at from that time to now, that was sort of like a repetitive theme. Like, oh, Michael Jackson isn't an N-word and Magic Johnson isn't an N-word. They're different. They're like special. But it's very telling about the mindset and how people are conditioned to sort of accept certain
entertain
things.
Us.
Yeah, for real. We'll love you when you're shooting in the gym or singing on stage or dancing or whatever, but don't try to marry my daughter because then it's a problem. But
you know what though, Mr. A? There's a lot of that in the Latin culture too, though.
We're about to turn into that right now.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So now you're growing up in this neighborhood. You're going through these different experiences. You're starting to travel. You're starting to get outside of your comfort zone, right? So now, at what point in your life do you remember sort of gravitating to your roots and becoming interested to learn about who you are and those that you came from?
Oh man, it's a heavy question, because there was a few different moments that kind of just like slowly stacked up on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one pivotal one, but there were other ones that started to introduce me. So now that I'm older, I can kind of reflect on them. And I would say that one with my friend and his mom, that was one, right? That was something that started to make me want to hang out with my Hispanic or Latino friends that were living in Bensonhurst, right? You know, started to make me say like, yo, you know, I should be, you know whose house I had dinner at all the time before even that?
Who?
My El Salvadorian friend, his family, right? His mom would open the door for me and be like, come in, sit down, eat. But
Siéntate.
yeah, none of the Italians were like that, you know, with us, right? So I think when I went to Kingsborough, I became part of the Puerto Rican Student Union for the girls. I ain't gonna lie.
I was gonna get to that.
That's what brought me in.
Yeah.
But that's what hooked me, right? It was like I found it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I found an interest, and I stayed, you know. They taught me a lot about identity. I've never been to the Puerto Rican Day Parade before that. So they would have a float.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. I loved it. You know, it was a proud moment. It was at that time, right? We're talking about hip hop music. We're talking about culture. We're talking about, you know, Big Pun. We're talking about like our people during a time that were kind of dominant, you know, and it was a proud moment for me to be Puerto Rican and part of that cultural movement that was happening. And I took that serious. I was like, okay, now I'm in Kingsborough. It was like something that was like making me feel like, I want to know more about this, right? I want to know more about my culture. My grandparents lived in Puerto Rico, you know, all their life, for how long I've known them to have a relationship with them. So I didn't get a lot of history and things from the elder generations, right? From my grandparents,
right.
from my dad's side specifically. And I think that's something that we missed, right? Like some of our generations, we grew up with our elderly grandparents and stuff, or even our parents, and they're that influence of culture, right? And they say, you know, you speak Spanish at home, you speak English outside, right? There's some families that are like that. Some are like, we want you to assimilate, and we don't want you to speak Spanish at all because we don't want you to be treated different. And we have to understand both sides, right? There shouldn't be any shunning of either side. But for me specifically, you know, that was our family. It was just like, you know, we spoke English all the time. But I started to recognize that void of my language. I was missing my own personal family history. I was missing because I'm looking at everyone else's, right? I'm learning about history and culture and language through other people's perspective, through other people's point of view, through other people's experience. And I was like, nah, like then I turn and I see my dad, or I turn and I see my mom, and and I'm like, yo, what about us? So that started for me. I started to dig into my own family roots. I started to reflect my art on that. I started to explore what Puerto Ricans were, what areas we were in. So I could see what was in those areas that were for us. So for example, East Harlem became a really big influence on a lot of my work, because not just because it's a Puerto Rican community, but because what that Puerto Rican community had developed. They developed institutions, they developed schools that were named after Puerto Ricans. They made their mark and they for the people. So and Lower East Side as well, right? The New Eurekan Poets Cafe was one of the places that I visited every week.
Yeah.
Where I got, you know, my New Eurekan history, you know, that's the bridge, you know, the bridge. That's, you know,
yeah,
that was the bridge. That was like, yo, Puerto Ricans that grew up here in New York speaking about that middle ground of like that place of like, the Puerto Ricans, they say, ni de aquí y de allá, right? It's like from either here or there. It's like we're in that middle. We struggle with being accepted in Puerto Rico. We struggle with being accepted here. So I started to learn about that and try to understand that more. And I travel to Puerto Rico every year. So now it's a different mindset for me of how I'm experiencing Puerto Rico, right? And hearing about these experiences that these poets are so eloquently explaining. And now I'm like, yo, I want to see, I'm in my family's house all the time. I don't experience that shit.
You started to entrench yourself in these experiences, basically.
Yeah.
And it's a profound thing when you really get your feet on the ground and you start really, like you said earlier, the tangible items, and you start touching them and coming in contact not only with these things, but with people and hearing the history. It changes you. It's profound almost, right?
100%.
And those communities that you talked about, Adrian, I can remember as a kid going into Lower East Side because that's when my mother's family migrated to when they came here. You had gardens. Like they would make little not like full-on fincas, but they would make like something you would consider a finca. In every other block from Avenue B all the way to Avenue D, you would catch these little fincas on the corner. There were a couple of gallos. There would be a couple of chickens. They would have an area to play dominoes, grow, fruits, vegetables, or whatever, and they would just be in there like they were back on the island.
My grandfather's vegetables and stuff in my aunt's house, always on 60th.
Yeah,
always in the backyard.
And it's funny because you hear, unless you like, we're having this discussion. I'm sure everybody in the room knows about these things and places, right? But if you just pay attention to media, right, especially in the 80s and 90s, what were we? We were red pants wearing, menudo, and there wasn't anything else outside of that. And when you speak to learning about our history, you notice you don't start learning about it yourself until you get into Kingsborough, which is in college, and you had to join a group, and it's almost as if our history is relegated to being an elective. You have to search it out, but we've had a stronger impact on history than they like to let on. So now you're in Puerto Rico.
For sure.
You start going to Puerto Rico. What do you start to understand and learn for yourself?
Yeah, I just started to explore the island, man, and I really just went. I went for like 3 weeks or something like that by myself, and just traveled everywhere, just drove around and like just experienced it. I needed to know what it felt like on the east side of the island. I needed to know what it felt like on the west side. I needed to know what it felt like in the mountains in the center, on the beaches, because these are all different communities. These are all different people. They live different. They think different. So that's what I sought out for. And then when I learned about a lot of this stuff, I came back with all the stories, right? I came back with the holy shit. Like, now I'm trying to figure out what kind of art I want to make and how do I represent it. But again, I try to tie it back to my family history. So I remember now my grandparents at this point had moved from Puerto Rico to my dad's house in Sunset. So they lived on the top floor apartment in Sunset with us. And I came back from one of my trips. I used to travel back and forth from Puerto Rico and Miami all the time. And I visit my grandfather, and he tells me, hey, I was about to go to Puerto Rico. And he's like, do me a favor, when you go to Puerto Rico, go to Lares and go to the Revolutionary Square in Lares, Plaza, and take a picture of the monument. There's a white monument. Take a picture of that monument. And I was like, okay. But I'm in my beginning stages of learning about stuff, right? I didn't learn about El Grito de Lares yet. I didn't learn about any of the revolutionary stuff yet, really. It was more very superficial, like very, surface of our culture, right? So I'm like, all right, I go to Puerto Rico, I go to Lares, let me do this for my grandfather, I take these pictures. But I look at the plaque and there's a name, Venancio Román, that's on the plaque. I was like, oh shit, same name. Didn't click, right? It was just the same name, right? There's plenty of us that got the same name.
Yeah.
So I go back to New York. I have the pictures. I show my grandfather, hey, look, I took these pictures, and he says that's our family on there. And my grandfather, let me tell you, my grandfather is super, religious, spiritual man, right? He spoke English, Spanish, and Hebrew. He had a 3rd grade education. He can read and write in these languages. Like he was, very proficient, with what he knew. And when he told me that, I would have never thought that that's where he was sending me, right? Because any conversations we had was always about God and was always, that kind of stuff, But when he sent me there and came back and said, "This is your family," that was a moment for me. I was just like, "Oh snap!" Like now it goes a level higher of it's not just about the culture; it's about what our family did, and then I started just getting into it, man, and started to talk to him and talk to a lot of other people, man. I went, I was all over El Barrio, like doing interviews of people and taking pictures. Like I literally was just trying to document anything Puerto Rican at that time for me. Yeah,
that's what happened. You get struck.
Adrian, we had a guy Gerald on the other day. He was, great guest, historian, and he was big into genetics, like 23andMe and stuff like that. Did you do any stuff like that?
Yeah, I have all the ancestry tree. I have my DNA.
Nice.
I took the DNA test. It was just, that kind of stuff for me. The DNA test kind of thing is a little off for me because, it's groups of people that run that, right? It's these groups of people are only traveling to certain places that are kind of getting DNA from different people. So I don't know how accurate exactly that is, but I just wanted to get it just to see. Excuse me.
All right.
But yeah, man. But I think it was the pivotal moment was when my grandfather passed away for me. Right, my grandfather was an artist as well, self-taught again. I learned. I think I learned things from him, and I kept them inside until it was like a time that I didn't know when was going to come that I was going to use those tools, that I started to kind of like just put these things in. And when he passed away, I think all of the questions and all of the answers that I didn't get were right in front and center for me. And I was like, I need to push this further. I need to do more exploration about our family. I need to do more about myself. It was just a big moment for me. And my camera up here, that's this one. That's one of his hats. So I used to wear, a lot of fedoras all the time, and that was like a family thing that, he wore fedoras like that all the time. So it was just something, he even gave me the Viajero name. I know we were talking about it, cracking on the name earlier and talking about where it came from. It was from him, man.
Nice.
And again, it was a moment that he didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to call you El Viajero and you're El Viajero." It was an indirect, sarcastic remark that he gave me about, like, because of my travels. Like I was going to Puerto Rico every month or Miami every month. And I came to visit him one day and he's like, "Hey, mira, quien está aquí, El Viajero." Like, now you come up to say hi, right? Like you're the Mr. Traveler. Like we don't see you.
You don't got time for me no more. Now
Exactly.
Big shot, big time, man.
Yeah.
It's funny how, when I listen to the story about you and your grandfather, and this is the reason why, shout out to both my children who are young adults now. They feel like I pressure them to have babies. The reason why, in listening to your story, is because I want to have that impact on my grandchildren. I want them to speak of me and have the relationship that you're speaking of right now. The impact that your abuelo had on you. Just listening to you tell the story and seeing how it gave you motivation and how it inspired you to move forward and go and search out these things. And not only that, but, you yourself as a man are growing and you're pushing yourself to do so by these travels and meeting these people. But at the root of it, abuelo's there on your shoulder, like, yo, those memories are the ones that propelled you in this moment of time, man. So If
Yeah,
my
man.
listening, I need some grandbabies. No rush, no pressure.
No
So
pressure.
for real. So now you, man, I feel
I
like
know.
it's a lifetime right now.
Yeah, yo. I mean, there's a lot of. I think going into Viajero
Mhm.
is a interesting segue into like the next era of once I figured out everything of like where my direction was. Viajero was something where uh it still didn't hit me, right? Like I said, until he passed away, and then the moment that it hit me was I always loved to think about traveling, right?
Mhm.
I didn't go crazy traveling anywhere like a real traveler should be, but um, I had these Samsonite uh, old luggage cases that I used to use as a coffee table in my apartment.
Okay.
And these hats that he has, right?
Mhm.
He had just passed away. I had them with me. I had them on the luggage, and the luggage was in front of me, and I'm sitting there, and I was like, I want to draw something, and I don't know what to draw. And I was just struggling, and I just started just sketching this little guy sitting down with his legs crossed, kind of just like chilling, sitting on these luggage, uh, Samsonite luggage bags. And I was using the bags as my sketch, right? I'm looking at my reference. And then the little guy, I erased his head, the top part, and I put that hat on the little guy. So now that little guy is as this character. He has this hat, the luggage. He looks like Puerto Rican. He has his little Guayabera shirt on. And that turned into El Viajero. That character I would draw all the time. And it became kind of like almost like a graffiti caricature.
Yeah.
And he was El Viajero. And I didn't have my direction of my art yet still, right? So I'm still kind of loose with what I'm doing. So the different jobs that I had for these different companies that were in creative industries, I used to draw this character on everything. And so even now, the people that I work with start looking at like this character, calling it El Viajero, but not knowing my name and then referencing me as El Viajero. And I was like, nah, that's not, that's my character. That's not me. And it became so repetitive that it dawned on me that I'm just like, yo, like at the moment it's just like, yo, why is this coming up like this so much? And then I was like, then I connected to my grandfather. I was like, yo, he's telling me, yo, like I gave you this name. You gave that dude my hat, the luggage bag, like all of these little things started to kind of play. And from that point, it wasn't just about the name to me. Then it was about living that truth and living out that name in some way or the other. And it was about, when you think of traveler, when you think of traveling, and we were talking about my childhood and how we grew up in the neighborhoods we grew up in and not crossing these boundaries, whether we just didn't go to those places or we were forced to stay in our own boundaries because of who we were.
Right.
So that stayed in my mind of like, at this point, I grew up, I'm in Sunset at this point and starting to think, where else have I gone, man? Like, who else knows that I'm Puerto Rican? Who else knows that who Puerto Ricans are? And my first trip on my own out of this country, or out of this side, because I went to Mexico and different places, but in Central America and stuff, but across the ocean, I went to Senegal for my first trip. I went to Africa by myself.
Wow.
West Africa by myself. And dude, like, that was the most mind-blowing experience for me because it affirmed so much about what I was doing and the direction of how I was thinking. It made me reflect on, almost like, you get on the plane as the plane is taking off. Most people, right? You look out the window, you're looking down at the land and stuff that you're leaving from.
Yeah.
Started to make me think of like, yo, I'm leaving that behind. Right. It was like metaphoric of like that person that is there now. I'm about to hit the motherland, right? I'm about to land in Africa. I'm about to land in West Africa by myself at 3 a.m. That's what time I was going to get there. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm getting to where I'm staying. I'm just going, right? Yo, dude, and it was just, yo, man, I encourage anybody and everybody that I talk to, man, like,
Travel.
get out of here, man. You know, just that one time will open up your door, and it's not traveling to be like, you know, there's different layers of traveling, right? Like most people's first travel out of this place want to go to like Italy, like, you know, the more the places that are already developed in a certain way that you don't feel like you have to be concerned about missing something.
Right.
You know, I went to a place where in my mind, I was thinking I'm going to be disconnected from all of that, which was not true. It was actually just West Africa. It's not, you know, it's not some random place that is not developed. That's not, you know, specifically I'm talking about Senegal where I went. You know, it's just another place, man. Yeah, it's beautiful. The people, the language, there's different, you know, mixtures of that as well. Because West Africa, there's like Lebanese people because they do the import exporting. The French colonized Senegal, so there's a lot of, you know, French Senegalese people speaking there, and it's just a beautiful country. So, you know, I came back as a, you know, with that badge of telling everyone in my family, like, yo, like, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here, yo. Like, just see it. You know, I'm not talking about stay in and move. Just go see it. Go experience something.
Yeah.
Out of that comfort, you know.
I think, Adrian, you know, listen to you tell this story about leaving, like you were saying metaphorically. You were definitely leaving the person that you were behind right before the trip, because that trip was going to change you. It was going to have such an impact on seeing this new world, if you would, and experiencing the people and the culture, that you were going to come back different, right? And Senegal, of all places, I think Senegal happens to be one of the places in Africa where salsa happens to be like popular. There's a few places in Africa that it is popular, but I think in Senegal it happens to be like really popular.
Bro, can I tell you, the guy that I met outside my hotel, he tells me, he hit me with every language first. He's asking me like, what, you know, where I'm from. I don't answer him in English. He hits me with the Italian. I don't answer, in French. Then it was Italian. Then I was super impressed by him just talking these languages. I just started talking to him. I was like, nah, you know, I'm from New York, but my family's from Puerto Rico, blah, blah. He's like, oh, Puerto Rico, Tito Puente. And like, yo, he just started singing and like.
And then when he walked away, he was like,
knew the culture.
American, he only knows one language. Get out of here.
Yo, it was a moment for me.
Yeah.
Maybe he did, but it was a moment for me that I was like, yo,
yep.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing? And it's not about those people in Africa or in any other country outside of the US that are struggling in any way. We have this preconception that there's a level of ignorance with people. And it's like, yo, if homeboy that is a cab driver can speak 5 languages, who's the ignorant one? And you're going over there speaking one.
The misconception.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. The misconception. Yes.
Yeah, of who people are. And it ties into the point of why people need to travel.
100%.
Because you can get out of this fucking bubble of America and start to realize that everything you see or hear on TV and whatever and radio, those they condition you to believe in these stereotypes or these, you know, these stories. Unless you get out and travel and start to meet people and experience their cultures, you believe all this bullshit. You know, that's why when they say, oh, you know, the first lady, Melania, is a genius. She speaks 4 languages. And I'm like, she's lazy. You go to Europe, that's light work. You can meet the paper boy, and the paper boy speaks like 4 or 5 languages, right? And then there's certain parts where dudes speak like 8, 9 dialects. And when you think about it, listen, if I could speak 8 different languages, do I really care that I'm a cab driver?
Exactly.
It's perspective. It's being in America has a very strong ill effect on people, but that's a whole other topic.
Right.
So now,
no, but that kind of like that experience, right? You have that experience, and then you come back with like this awakening of not that I wanted to come back and be like, I want to speak 5 languages,
Right.
but I'm like, what else? Those things that I wanted to learn. If this person is being an example of someone who can speak 5 languages, and I just met you randomly, like I just got here, and you're the dude that's just like hanging out outside my hotel room, just like chilling. If you're that person and you can speak 5 languages, I'm like, bro, I'm over here struggling, hustling to do college work and all this stuff that I'm thinking that I'm like, I'm doing so much, and I really wasn't. That was the impact that it had on me.
The importance of things in people in your life. I think that's the best way of putting it, right? The level of importance that we give things here in America, as opposed to when you go overseas or to other countries, is just different, right? Like if you go, let's speak to Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, the first time I went was in the 80s. My grandmother would get up at 5 a.m. every day without fail, sweep, clean, feed the animals, do survivalist. You know, she went to the supermercado for like staple items, but for the most part, everything was at the house. She didn't need, you know what I mean? She didn't need anything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you're in America and you're when you assimilate, as you said earlier, when you assimilate and become a part of this culture, you go from survivalist to consumer, and your mindset and the way you adapt and do things in the world is different. Your approach is different, and that's why we become lazy fat people. Everything is there. Our people, if we was in PR, you know, we got to get up and tend to the animals, and you know, make sure that, you know, we're weeding the plants because the avocados or the yuca or whatever is gonna, you know, it's gonna be coming in soon. We got to make sure everything is good. We got to till the land. It's not like that in America. So your focus.
Well, it's the white boys in Williamsburg that are doing that on the rooftop now.
Like it's cutting edge, right? Like
it's something. Yeah, it's something that's a trend. It's something that is expensive now. When it's something that was a natural way of life for many people, right? Now it's something that is also become a consumerized way of life, right? Like go to Whole Foods. That's key, right? It's like, it's like you go to Whole Foods, you're spending $8 on avocados, when like, you know, the C-Town, they're still expensive. They might be $5, but you ain't talking about $5 and $8, and it's coming from the same place. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So
you know, gentrification, organic food.
You gotta love that. I mean, those things have changed the face of the city over the last 15 to 20 years. Neighborhoods, and you know this, Adrian, and Sally, you know this as well. Like neighborhoods that these people wouldn't be caught in after dark. You know, they're living there. You know, they've taken over these areas. You know, the South Bronx is being called North Manhattan, right? And they're putting all these fancy names, and you know, people are telling me they live in Bushwick or Crown Heights, and I'm like, what?
Bushwick? You know what I mean? East Williamsburg?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, but what I'm saying to you is the stripe of people that are living there. Because I'm like, this young lady I worked with, she told me she lived in Crown Heights. I was like, really? Where? She was like, oh, President, right off the Parkway, President Street. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't live. I know that area. You don't live over there. She's like, yeah, it's a high rise. It has a doctor, it has a supermarket, it has a pool. I don't even have to leave the building. I said, oh, okay. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But they're going up all over. They're going up all over.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about Sunset earlier. If you just drive on 4th Avenue,
you'll see
them on 4th Avenue.
It's ugly as all hell, because you see our neighborhood disintegrating right in front of you, right? And when you take the soul of a community and remove it, it's not the same anymore. You know, the Sunset Park is not, you know, I wonder what name they're gonna come up with for it. I have a good
upper slope or something.
I have a good friend who's in the room right now who owns a brownstone and Sunset. I have two. Well, the other one isn't here, but their homes are worth millions. I'll say $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, beautiful thing. But everybody else, we're all gone, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's big money to us, right?
I was just gonna say that was my next comment. We're never gonna benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
We never bought our neighborhood. We never, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And it's all relative. It's only, you know, it's relative to the time period. If you had that hindsight to buy your building, right, or your apartment or your house, if you have that hindsight to say, oh, the opportunity, if you have the money, or you know, you sell, you know, if you're back then, and let's say the 70s, you know, a brownstone back then in a neighborhood that was not. We were talking about neighborhoods that were close to working areas, right? That let's go back to, like, we look at Red Hook, we look at Sunset, we look at Park Slope, we look at South Bronx. All of these places were close to the waterways, where that's where all of our people worked, at the docks, on the ships, on, you know, the trucks. These are our working class people that lived close to their work. The people that have money, that own those trucks or own that business, lived in the suburbs. So now, you know, we're the working people, but we're not thinking about like thinking that they're going to come back here. They're going to want this neighborhood. Look at what this neighborhood looks like. I don't even want this neighborhood.
We're thinking about
why would you want it? Yeah. Like, why would I want to save, you know, $60,000 or $50,000 to buy this house and then just stay in this neighborhood? I don't want that. I want to go to where those white folks live and live in peace and live in with area and space. But yeah, it has become the reverse. You know, the generations is different. The type of work is different. So it requires that kind of closeness to the work sites. And yeah, man, I mean, a lot of us are victims to it. And
we're all victims to it.
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine pre 9/11, and he's like, "Come on, let's take a ride." You know, Italian, he's Italian dude. You know, real cool, all good friends. We all know who he is. I don't want to say his name, but you know, whatever. We take a ride to Red Hook, Todd Shipyard down there. You know, into the, and you know, close to the tunnel. And like, come on, we're going in this factory, like factory looking place. I'm like, we get inside. And it's like they're building like lofts and all type of, you know, like you go up a staircase and it's like a bed, you sleep there. And I'm like, yo, dude, were you crazy? You know, this and that. But he had the vision. And I'll tell him to this day, I said, yo, man, I'm so sorry we didn't get in on that. Because it was like, you know, the money that's made on that now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man. And look, man, we can bring it back to it's happening in Puerto Rico, right?
Oh yeah,
it's going from the neighborhoods that we had here in the States to our personal direct roots on our island, you know. And it's a deeper conversation because it's not just gentrification.
The great exodus, right?
It's the exodus, that's part, but like the conversation around the colonial status of Puerto Rico, it always goes back to that. As much as people don't want to discuss the politics of the colonial status of Puerto Rico, but everything ties back to that. Everything from the Exodus, like you said, to Hurricane Maria, to the first Exodus in the 40s, and it's all of it, man. The economic crisis, everything was what's happening now with these expat folks like going to the island and buying and creating their own little utopias. You know, in Puerto Rico, it's like, and it's hard for us it's the same struggle in the sense of how do you fight that? Right.
The thing about it is, Adrian, and I'm sorry to
no, please, man, get in there. Yeah.
Because, you know, now I'm starting to get a little fire in my stomach.
All right, let's
waking up. You waking up?
Yeah. Listen, man, the reality
everybody will get more details in my book.
Yeah, and we're gonna segue into that. I'm glad you said.
No. I meant like a biography book. You want to know more? Do you want to know more about my life? You get it in the book.
Yeah, we're selling it after the show. Come visit us. The reality is, when you're speaking of Puerto Rico and the present condition that it's in, you have to understand the landlord, right? And the landlord never makes plans to have the people who are renting come up. And this is a perpetual thing wherever they go, right? If you look at the Philippines, you can see it. If you look at Guam, you can see it. You can look at territories and see this taking hold. Always has been that way, right? Hawaii, right? Beautiful. Hawaii's beautiful. Who wouldn't want to live in Hawaii, right? And understand the actions that happen and that are taken against Hawaii and the natives, the indigenous people of that land. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at Puerto Rico, they were taken from Spain, right? They didn't know what to do with Puerto Rico. They just knew they wanted it for strategic purposes, right? Mm-hmm. Then they discovered the coffee and the sugar and this, and they were like, oh, we're going to get some money. Right now, America has put Puerto Rico in such a like, the economic hole is just beyond repair. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, what's going to happen is our people will be pushed out to live into, and those that stay will live in outskirts, but all the important and beautiful and scenic, all those items are going to be owned by people outside of the island, right? Mm-hmm. When Hurricane Maria hit, that was the moment for Puerto Rico to stand up, do away with these proxy politicians that adhere to the American agenda, take the armory, seize the ports, and tell America, hey, you know what? Kick rocks. Because it's beyond, we've gotten beyond the pale already with this situation. And all America is going to continue to do is squeeze Puerto Rico dry. Mm-hmm. They owe us reparations. They owe us for the stolen sugar. They owe us for Vieques. They owe us for a lot. And the sad thing is, we're speaking of this now, right? You can talk to young teenagers right now in 2021. And if you ask them, hey, do you know how so-and-so sugar company got started? They couldn't tell you. If you said, hey, do you know who was the name of the first governor?
You mean the really cool big sugar factory that everybody likes to go to and hang out in?
Exactly. Did you know he was a dope fiend? Did you know he was America's proxy? Did you? And they couldn't tell you. Do you know how many people were killed in the massacre? They couldn't tell you. Mm-hmm. Do you know who was the leader of the Nationalist Party? Who were the people that were, turning on him and her? And they could not tell you. Mm-hmm. And I say that to say this. Until we take back the education of our children away from these people and start to instill that pride and going back and trying to make a difference, it's never going to change. Never. But
yeah, absolutely.
I digress.
Adrian, no, hey man, I'm gonna add to that and say,
please.
There's the level of what we perceive revolution to be, mm-hmm. I think has to evolve the same way that taking over lands has evolved, right? We have to think of the word revolution differently in 2021, right? We can't think of revolution how the young lords were revolting. We can't think of revolution of how the Panthers revolted or the civil rights movement fought back, or how El Grito de Lares, how, like we honor and we acknowledge and remember these great times of revolt, of fighting back, and some of them lost, right? Some of them failed, but some of them succeeded. And I think in that time, there was a good amount of people that were in it for life, that were were ready to lay their life down for it. And I think we don't have a lot of folks like that today. And I hate to kind of put it out there like that. And it's the risk is has now been turned about the risk is not worth the reward anymore. And you know, the beauty of seeing like a Black Lives Matter movement, that's beautiful. That seeing that movement and seeing how people are organizing and mobilizing, and it's not just, you know, it's not just Black people, right? It's not just African Americans. It's Latinos that are following and helping push that movement forward. It's white people that are progressive. And there's issues in every movement, right? We can point the finger at this person that, you know, God forbid it's a white person who does some foul shit within somebody else's movement. You see, that's why we can't have white people in our shit. And it's like there's a lot of like, you know, a lot of that, right? Because we have it within our own groups that if it's only a Black group or only a Puerto Rican group, and we have our own Puerto Ricans that are going against each other within these groups or going against other groups of saying, you know what, just like the Malcolm and the Martins, right? You got one group of people that want to see this progression go this way. The other group of people want to see progression this way, but the end goal is the same, right? So it's like, why are we telling each other, yo, you want to go and jump in front of a bus with a flag and kill yourself? I'm all for that shit. I would never be like, yo, y'all radical motherfuckers are crazy. And nah, yo, do that. If you feel like it's going to be a pivotal moment in our history for Puerto Ricans, do what you do. Because I'm just thinking of the end goal of like, we want to see our people liberated. We want to see our island flourish. I don't care what people do. Don't get on me if my doors are my artistic path and how I introduce a revolution through education or introduce revolution through organizing us in a way that we should be focused on how to help us, right?
Yes, sir.
Because if we don't help us, what are you fighting? Most of the people that want to get in a revolution and want to talk some shit know very low percentage of what the big picture is. It's just a moment. It's just like, yo, let's show up. And that's great. We need the people to show up. But you also need to know why you're showing up. And I think like that's the thing.
The people that get involved with the looting and the stuff like that, like, nah, that's not what we're here. That's not what we're doing. We're here to, you know.
Right. But I would say though, that's the two sides, right? There's the sides of the people that are saying, yo, let's march in peace and we're going to show how powerful we are in unity, in control. Mm-hmm. And then there's the people that are like, yo, fuck that.
Mm-hmm. Because
we've been doing that shit.
And it don't work.
We've been doing that shit. And even if we don't do it, this young man was killed last week. This young man was killed this week. And it's just too many. Yeah. It's like the consequences, right? Like there's no consequences. So it's like we trying to be nice and be peaceful, but the consequences of doing that are not benefiting us, right?
Oh.
What do you think the end game is for Puerto Rico? Because they keep trying to push this statehood, right? And I think as far as like now with the Democrats back in office, I think that is something that they're going to try to do to get more numbers on their side. Even 100%. DC itself after the Capitol invasion.
100%. Yeah, man. No, I think it's definitely something that Puerto Ricans in the diaspora have to start looking at and recognizing. Like, if you love Puerto Rico, like how many of us motherfuckers say we do, we need to educate ourselves about what is happening here first, because the government here is what's going to dictate what's happening over there. The Puerto Ricans on the island, what they did to the governor, Ricky Rosselló, and everyone, millions of Puerto Ricans came out to get him out of office, right?
Yeah.
We marched, for days, right? What was the reason that got everybody out? Text messages about him talking about gays and women, and that these were topics that are completely wrong, right? He should not have been speaking like that as a politician or as his own people. Like, nobody should be speaking in that way. Yeah, he should not. Nobody should be speaking that way. However, nobody should be starving. Nobody should be getting their pensions taken away from a government that's corrupt. none of the teachers should be getting paid lower than minimum wage. Like there's so many other things that are core to our people and how we live that I personally see what we did, and we went and got the governor out for those topics, that we need to do the same thing for bigger issues.
Yes, sir.
That's a big issue, but there's bigger ones that affect everyone. Mostly the poor and the quote unquote middle class in Puerto Rico, the working class. Like it affects these people, and it's the people, the diaspora, that needs to like, yo.
The funny thing is in that one moment, you saw the power over something, you know, some would consider minute, but it definitely demonstrated the power that the people actually have on the island. And since our jibaros and viejitos have been taken out of the forefront of our culture on the island, and we've lost that respect for them because, again, we've become consumers. That needs to change, because our elders would lead back in the day, and the elders were respected back in the day. And when there was an issue, unresolved or otherwise, they would search out the elders on the island to be like, listen, what are we going to do? Nobody would move until the elders were sorted out, and they were like, listen, this is what's going on. We need to take care of this. All right, vamos a esto, because this ain't going on no more, right? And the proxies that are there, for me, in my mind, they need to go, and Puerto Rico does not need statehood. That's just my opinion.
Oh, 100%. No way.
Right? We don't need that. We've had that up for vote many a times before. We've always voted it down anyway. So for me, statehood is not even an option. But I want to segue into this topic, because we'll stay on this shit forever. And Adrian,
yes.
I don't think that I didn't notice that button on your sweater. I really like that. Salute to you, brother. So let's talk about your book. I think that you know, having a daughter myself, I can definitely relate to sort of that connection. Having a daughter is something that is different. That's what I think I can say is very different. So the inspiration for your book comes from your daughter, as I understand it. Could you understand your process? I mean, can you explain your process and how it all came to fruition for you?
Yeah, man. So a lot of everything that we just spoke about, you know, was the process that I thought about for myself, right? Up to now, I have a child, my first daughter, and I reflected on all of those things that I went through, that experience that I went through. I would never change that, but that void that I had for so long of not knowing so much of my history and not knowing, you know, family history and a lot of those things that pushed me forward. I didn't want my daughter to experience the same thing. So I started to kind of, it started with me just printing out photos from the internet of specific people like Pedro Albizu Campo, Lolita Lebron, you know, just very visionaries that were recognized and identified in both the island and in the diaspora, right? So I didn't want to just teach her about like the people in Puerto Rico and this, because then it becomes almost like a fantasy of these people that I don't know and a place that I don't live. And, you know, I didn't want that. I wanted her to understand that we have a huge impact on the island, obviously, because that's where we're from, but we have a huge impact here in this country. And our people have done so much in this country that I wanted her to know. And the issue was that I was printing out these photos and I'm writing little kind of bullet notes for her, but they're black and white photos because they were talking about people from like the 30s or before, right? Or the 50s and before. And it wasn't clicking, you know, and it's a real photograph of a person, but I'm talking to a 6-year-old, right? At the time, or 5-year-old at the time. And it's just not clicking. So
not registering.
So I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna try to draw these out in a childlike way, and get her interest in the creative thing, have it in color, have it in both colors, very simple illustration, and then have the same bullet points. And I bought her a bunch of books called The Little Feminists, and there's a lot of books out there that are like, gotta give her woman's strength, very early on. So, I'm kind of setting her up with these books, and I'm like, man, like, we don't have anything like this anywhere, specifically for Puerto Ricans, right? And it kind of hit me, it hit me different because I always felt like we're always the people who want to be inclusive, right? We always don't want to have other people feel left out. That's just our love of just being like, yo, my Italian best friend, like, it's cool. You can rock with us. Yo, my Chinese friend, you know what I mean? Like those kind of things, like, yo, you're going to eat rice and beans tonight. And you start to kind of like, you're feeding your culture to the people around you.
We adopt people.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's crazy is that makes people feel almost empowered to look at us inferior. The more we adopt people, we have to be careful about how we adopt people. I would say it that way.
Okay.
Because the way we adopt people, I think, is where it starts to make people think that they could treat us and talk to us a certain way, or treat the cultural things that are important to us that we introduce them to. And because it's not important to them, they don't know how to handle that, right? Puerto Rican Parade being one of them. We've adopted many people that are not Puerto Rican, and there's been slogans for the parade that say, like, become Puerto Rican, right? By just coming to the parade and be a part of this parade. And for the day, you're Puerto Rican. But what does that mean? Like, we're not educating. What does that actually mean? You're just giving somebody a label to be like, you Puerto Rican for the day. It's like, all right, I can, see some girls.
Yeah, it's not just paranda, my man.
Some reggaeton, yeah, sing some big pun, whatever. But for my daughter, I was like, no, man, like, I'm gonna start with this. I searched online for books in Puerto Rico, and a lot of the books in Puerto Rico were older books, and the way the history was being taught was very Americanized. It was one-sided to say, a certain part of history. The people that they were celebrating and honoring were people who pushed these things forward, like a Luis Muñoz Marin. That there's a lot of us who are very fragmented of celebrating him and going against him. He was independent. He was for independence at one point, and saw the progression. And it was just those kind of things. I was like, yeah, but where's the Albizu? That was the one person that I was like, I want her to at least like know this person, right? But nothing, man, nothing. So I made my own. I went down a list of different visionaries, I call them, to make sure that I was highlighting a variety of people. So it wasn't just going to be people that were. I wanted to make sure that there was the different ethnic groups, like color wise, right? So there's Albizu is darker skin. Arturo Schomburg is darker than Albizu, right? And then there's the Lolita Lebron, who's lighter than all of them. And, the different shades that we come in, I wanted to make sure that we highlight that. I wanted to make sure that I highlighted male and female. I wanted to make sure that I highlighted the diaspora and the island to show our history in both places. So I kind of picked on, I have the book right in front of me, actually.
Yes, that's what I was waiting for.
Boom.
Did you put the Viajero in the book?
No, Viajero's is retired.
Okay.
The little guy's retired. Yeah,
wait a minute.
You got to bring him out, bro.
Yeah, bro. You should.
I know.
That book.
Yep.
Where can we find that book?
So, unfortunately, I have two. Right now, I have this.
I'm gonna pay you ahora because we're gonna have to
visionaries, and
back in circulation, brother.
I know, and then I got this one, was the history of El Grito de Lares. So this has some of the snippets of the history of what El Grito de Lares was, but also the people So Caras Lindas focuses on the people, right? So learn their names, learn what they look like, learn what they did. So it's not just a storybook. It's something to kind of highlight the people, our Caras Lindas, right? It comes from that song Caras Lindas de mi gente negra from Ismael Rivera. And I did that intentionally to drive home the honor and the respect for our African heritage and honoring that, and making sure that we don't. A lot of Puerto Ricans deny and reject their blackness, and my family and myself do not, and we're very proud of that connection. So I wanted to make sure that my daughter has that education. Being that we're in Black Heritage Month, Black History Month, I should say. I'm sorry. This is somebody that Puerto Ricans, everybody should know, right? I'm highlighting Puerto Ricans because we tend to not know our own people, right? Because it's, again, the lack of education through our school systems and stuff like that. So this is one person this month that everybody should look up. It's Felicitas Mendez. Felicitas Mendez. What's up? Felicitas Mendez?
Speak on it, Adrian, because I'm
gonna put it. So Felicitas Mendez. Actually, I'm just gonna read the bullet points and then we can kind of get into the deal because it's quick. So Felicitas was a Puerto Rican pioneer of the civil rights movement. Felicitas worked to change laws in California, making it the first state to allow children of all colors to learn together. And Felicitas helped to bring an end to school segregation across the entire country. So we're all familiar with the civil rights movement and the civil rights time of desegregating our schools in the United States. That was through the Brown versus the Board of Ed, right? That was the case. Thurgood Marshall was a part of that case. But before that case, there was the case of Mendez versus Westminster. And Mendez versus Westminster was the case that Felicitas and her husband wanted to put their daughter Sylvia in a school in Westminster County, California, that was for white children. So the schools were segregated back then, with Mexican children and Black children could not go to the white school. So Felicitas' sister was lighter than her. So she took her children to the school she was married to a white man, and they had daughters, and their children came out lighter than them. Brought their children to the school. She brought Sylvia, so Felicitas' daughter as well, and her children, and they accepted the Felicitas' sister's kids, but saw Sylvia because she's darker skinned, and said she can't attend to this school. So that caused the drive for them to fight to allow Sylvia to go to that school. Thurgood Marshall and a few other lawyers, but I like to make sure that I highlight Thurgood Marshall because he was a lawyer on that case, and it eventually became, like I said, that the first case that won to desegregate schools in California, which then turned into Thurgood Marshall. Then he was in the Brown versus Education, and did it across the whole country. But it started with this one, and Sylvia is a child of a Mexican and a Puerto Rican, that led this movement. And it's not to minimize the movement of the Brown versus Board of Ed. It's not to minimize the African-American civil rights movement. It's for Puerto Ricans, Mexican, and everyone else to make sure that we understand that we were a part of that struggle as well, that we fought with you during we had the same struggle. This is the prime case of a Puerto Rican and a Mexican who fought for the same things that, the Brown versus Board of Ed. Yeah, it did. So and it's not to say, look, ours was first. We did it first. It's
Third
yeah,
was
it's not
practicing. He was practicing on that one.
Yeah, that was the warm up.
He learned.
Exactly.
He learned from it.
It was the template that he used to win the case after.
Okay, this is where I messed up here, so let me fix that for the next one. Yeah,
exactly.
And not only that, but, you know, that should be a unifying story, right? That should be something that unifies us, because our struggles, our history here in the Americas isn't identical. We didn't endure chattel slavery. Right. However, our struggles have been parallel. And in some way, shape, or form, we've always sort of collided with each other along that path. You know what I mean? Right. So we have a lot of commonality. And if you look through history, you'll find you have to look deep, because, again, they don't teach this shit. It's an elective.
No. And one of the places, if you are interested in learning about specifically our Puerto Rican history, just our Puerto Rican history, would be El Centro, the Puerto Rican library in East Harlem is the main for Puerto Rican history and documentation. But the Schomburg Library in Harlem, if you want to learn about African American history and African history, Arturo Schomburg was Puerto Rican, right? He's Black Puerto Rican. He was also in Caras Lindas book here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you mentioned him in the.
Yeah. So we mentioned him, right? And he was a collector of everything African, right? He collected stories, letters and photos, and he was a documentarian, someone who just felt the pride in being a Black man, and the pride of the connection to African roots and the history, and as well as a Latin American man at that time. That's your Latin American history, or African history. So living in both of those shoes, right, and saying, I'm going to bridge that gap. I'm going to educate people on our African roots in Latin America, our African roots in the Caribbean, and document all of these stories and the letters and everything, and just and have that as a place where, for our future, like, look, it's a library now, right? You can go and you can learn about all this history. And it's funny, man, because I've had a lot of conversations with folks in the different institutions up there in Harlem and stuff, and the struggle of pulling Arturo in two directions. Yeah,
the racial draft.
Yeah, bro, of being like, Arturo is ours. Right?
Yeah.
Because one side is saying he's Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
But the other side is saying, yeah, but he's Black, and look at what he did for our African history. Right? None of y'all other Puerto Ricans were so prideful and shit that you did this. He did this.
Yeah.
So, both sides are right. Right. So that's where, like you said before, about the unity of saying these are the kind of people that, I'm calling it the Puerto Rican visionaries of this one book, to say, like, they had that vision. This person had that vision to say that dialogue that y'all are having is healthy, because then it makes you think, like, all the shit that you're saying is going to make you understand that that's how alike you are. Don't you realize that you're arguing about the same shit?
Yeah. Like, I see our people, just think of it. This is how I'm thinking of it right now, because I'm getting hungry. This is like a patele, right? So we are the chunks of penile that they put, and the olives. And I don't know if there's any old school ladies out there that still put like a piece of fat, because my mother used to. It's the worst. And that is who we are. But these people that have played these roles, that, like you spoke of a Schomburg, right? That's the masa that should bind all of us together. Because if you don't have that, there's no what's connecting us, right? And we need to recognize those things. And not only that, but we need to build off of them, right? Now, Adrian, we're definitely we could stay here for 3 hours.
I know, man. I know.
I want to ask you, why or how can we get these books back in circulation? Because just seeing them, the hard copies, I want to buy them to add them to my collection for my grandbabies, right? And two, what do you have in the very near future, if anything, that you're working on?
Oof. Yo, I'm like an octopus, bro. Like I work on like 10 things at one time, but Caras Lindas first. Caras Lindas. So like I said, these 2 books I have right now. The Visionaries book was the first book, and it was kind of like my way to introduce this topic and to introduce and just to kind of see like, yo, do our people really want this, right?
Right.
I know we need it, but is it important enough for our people to want it as well, right? So I sold out of that book already. I do all of this independently, so I pay for all the printing and pay for all this stuff myself. So hopefully I can get the Visionaries one printed again soon. But I currently have the El Grito de Lares book currently on the website. So carasLindasBooks.com has the El Grito de Lares book. I usually kind of put some free stuff on there, like free downloads. I think currently I have a free download of an activity worksheet about Albizu Campos.
Yeah, I just look on it right now.
Do you see it? Yeah. Yeah, so it's just kind of being like, if you have the book, for whoever has the book, or if you don't, you can kind of Google information about him. But it's to say, like, if you were to meet Albizu, what would you say to him, right? Knowing a little bit of what he did and knowing who he was, I want to start to spark interest on thinking about how you would start to interact with people like this. Because once I think kids and even adults, man, this book sold out that quick, I think because, I would buy it if I didn't have a kid, right? It's just something that's just like, we need to have even this little bit of information accessible. And it's not saying accessible through the internet, because the internet has everything, but it's just like, I can touch this, right? It's something tangible that I can have forever. So that's up there. In the future, I am working. I'll start with Caras Lindas. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek of something that I haven't really shown yet.
The
but
exclusive.
The exclusive. I kind of showed it
Drum roll.
on my Instagram a little bit, but so we got this box. It's Caras Lindas, El Maestro, right?
Oh.
And I'm gonna open this up. And in this box, you will get a book. We got some buttons there of Albizu, of the nationalist button.
Yes, sir.
Nationalist Party button. And if you dig a little deeper, this is the prototype, so a little rough.
I need a pan soao in there or something.
For real?
Yo,
I'm
starving right now. And then we got this is the prototype, but we got a little figure, collector's statue of Don Pedro.
Oh man,
right?
He needs to be with a Viajero, brother.
Oh, hold on. Let me show you. This was a semi-painted one that I started.
Nice.
Oh, wait, gotta go this way. So we got a Don Pedro, and then this is the podium. So this is
you can help with. Look at this guy.
So this is a famous podium. Yo, this is crazy. Yeah. It's like in reverse. That like I move one way.
Yeah,
that's the one from him giving the famous speech with that puñazo when he's talking. Oh man,
so he'll be like that
right there. That's dope. Right. That is fine.
So that's coming soon, man. I'm in the process, and again, like I said, man, I'm doing all this stuff on my own. No funding. Nothing crazy. So
anybody out there that's looking to the entrepreneur,
I am open. Trust me. If anybody wants to help,
listen. If you can see your screen right now,
any philanthropists out there,
my man,
you can see. I just copped 2 books, one for my grandbabies, and one for my 2 son fools, Josiah and Asa. to make sure that they have a piece of this history, as they're still very young, so they
Thank you,
have
brother.
this. So if you are watching the show, please support our brother Adrian. This is not only important, it's necessary. It is necessary that we teach our children this. And not only that, above all else, we have to support our people. And as you can see, I just went to the site, I bought 2 books, and when the other releases open up, I'm going to buy some more, because we need to support this brother.
Thank you, brother.
His passion is helping our people. It's teaching our children, and it's evident right there. And I want, when you drop that piece, I'm expecting a text like, hey,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got you.
Yes, please.
They're going to be the first run is going to be a pretty limited amount until.
Mira, deja eso. Yeah, I need one. Not even. You know what I'm going to say? I need 2, and I need. Listen to my brother. Blah 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 blah. The exclusive joint, because those pieces they're incredible.
Thank you, man.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even know how to contextualize how to close this show out, because speaking to Adrian during this 2 hours has been an experience. It has drummed up a lot of emotion, if you would, but most of all, I'm just honored, and I want to thank you for giving our show your time, and understand that now you're a part of the Sets family. So in the future, you're doing a release, you're doing an installation, whatever it is that you're doing, you're more than welcome to reach out. We'll have you on for 5 minutes. We'll have you on for an hour. It doesn't matter. You are part of this family.
Looks like you got me 2 this time.
Yeah, well, listen, we can go for 3, but so yeah, you just understand that you're a part of this family, and anything that you're doing, we want to know about it. All right,
for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Freddie got his Wi-Fi back. He left when you said you didn't take Peter Pratt.
Oh yeah,
he got his Wi-Fi back. He's back on. I'm joking, man. Well, Adrian, thank you, brother. Appreciate you coming, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. No, I was saying my pops is like, oh, you guys still talking on this thing?
Yeah.
He got his Wi-Fi back.
Hablando mierda de mí. Coño. Listen, sit in the green room, man. We want to close out the show and want to speak to you, all right?
Appreciate you.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, man. Thank you, guys.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys don't take the time to go and support, we lose. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, man.
You gotta put your money where your mouth is. And as you see, I bought 2 books. When Adrian drops that other piece, I'm gonna cop 2 of those too. It's important that we learn our history and teach it.
Yeah, early Christmas gifts for.
There you go. Look at that. You don't even got to think about it. So, great show.
Yeah, I'm good.
Very good show.
Ready to watch Snowfall.
Yeah. Oh, that's why you was beating the
10 o'clock. No,
yeah. No, I gotta eat. I haven't eaten anything. I'm whatever. So yeah.
I haven't gone nowhere.
Yeah. So Sunday, Okori Hanzo will be the artist, will be on the show. I hope everybody could join us in that. This is the midweek. I really appreciate Adrian coming on. Salute to our brother, Mr. Stivey Roman. Thank you for making the connection. And everybody staying with us. We appreciate you. But as always, we got to go. So we'll see you on Sunday. Make sure you're here, and keep watching. Salute.
Thank you, guys.